welcome to those who are just joining. My name is Jocelyn Nicholas, and I'm a realtor here in Southern Ontario. I'm really excited to be talking about this, selling tenanted student rentals. This is one of my specialties, and I've been doing it for a couple of years now, where I just specialize on selling tenanted properties. I got into this because I own some of those properties myself, and I know the challenges that we face as investors trying to sell properties that are tenanted. So that's why I put together this presentation, so that we can kind of look at what some of the best practices are in the industry. Again, as I was just saying a couple minutes ago, we'll just give it a couple more minutes, 3 minutes. I like to start around 7:03, just to give time for those who are just, setting up their settings and all that. So if you have questions in the meantime, please put them in the chat box, and I will answer them at the end of the presentation. And if you're looking to get a copy of the recording, please let us know, because this webinar is being recorded, and we do make our recordings available on our YouTube channel. So if you're somebody who's new here, you're an investor, you'd like to talk more about investments or learn more about the things that I've been teaching our clients, you can definitely go on our YouTube channel and check out some of our previous videos. We'll put a link in the chat for our YouTube channel, and you can go there and kind of see some of the topics that we've covered in the last couple of years, because we've been doing webinars for at least maybe 4 years, 3 to 4 years. Okay, so if you have questions, please let me know. I'm very excited. If you are here with very specific questions or are very personal, I prefer that you book a one-on-one consultation with me for 2 reasons. One is if it's a very specific situation, unless I have the full picture, it's hard to give a recommendation that you can actually act on. Also, for the second reason being, some people have privacy issues. They don't want to reveal much on a webinar like this. We also respect that. However, if your question is general, or you just have a quick question, please do put them in the Q&A and we'll answer them. Otherwise, we'll put a link where you can book a one-on-one consultation, and I can sit with you and answer those questions. Alrighty, it's 7:03, and we'll get started with our presentation. Once again, my name is Jocelyn Nicholas. I am a full-time realtor and full-time real estate investor. I actually started in real estate as an investor. So I used to have a full-time job, and we would use our income. When I say we, it's my husband and I, we would use our income to buy properties that we would then rent out. So that's basically how we started. And then as our portfolio grew, our interest in the real estate market grew. So then I quit my full-time job to do real estate full-time. So we are, we own properties in Hamilton, Guelph, and Kitchener-Waterloo. And if I had to pick a superpower, it would be building wealth through real estate. And the reason I love this is because I see what it's done for my clients. I see what it's done for me and my family and those that I work with. So because of this, this is a topic that I'm very passionate about. And that's why I said earlier, because I know a lot of people here will likely be investors. So if you want to chat real estate investing, please connect with me. And I always love talking investments, especially in this market that I'm in. So today we'll be looking at a quick market update. We'll look at what the market is doing right now. We'll look at some tenant rights, things that you should keep in mind. I'm not going to go into details about the tenant rights and landlords. I will just focus on what we need to know as it relates to the sale of a property. If you want the complete documents, you can get them with the LTB. You can get a full document of what those rights and responsibilities are. But tonight, I'll only cover the rights and responsibilities as it relates to selling a property. We'll also look at some practical advice and some examples, things that you should keep in mind as you're selling a property. And then we'll look at some of the things, like a checklist, some of the things you should be thinking about if you have a student rental that you'd like to sell either this year or next year. Because sometimes I'm working with clients who have a year to prepare for the sale. So if that's you, we do have a checklist that you can follow. And if you're somebody who wants to sell this year, then that's also a conversation that we can have. Okay, so for a quick market update, many of you already know, because you own properties, the rates have gone up. We've gone from an overnight rate of 0.25 to now at 5%, which is the highest we've had in a long time. I like showing this graph because I want investors to see that this is actually one of the highest rates we've had in over 10 years, which is, something to keep in mind, especially if you're navigating, if you're selling to buy another property, and some clients ask, should they get a variable rate, a fixed rate, all those things. I just like to show this graph to help make a decision, just to see the history of where we've been and where we're going. So far, they've said they won't have any more rate hikes in the foreseeable future. They have said that things might change. However, with the predictions that I'm seeing with economists, as well as with just colleagues in the industry, there's a belief that rates may go down if inflation comes down. As you'll see in the next slide, inflation has come down quite a bit from where it was at the peak, but that still isn't enough for the Bank of Canada to reduce rates this quarter. In fact, it's believed that if they reduce rates, it's going to be in the second or third quarter of 2024. What we're seeing right now is that activity is picking up for sure. I think it's because the pause in rate hikes gives a little bit of stability. So we're seeing buyers come back, especially for student rentals. We're seeing right now that for student rentals, timing is everything. I cannot say that enough, because with student rentals, a lot of students are moving May 1st. So if you're looking to sell a student rental, this right now is the time to be talking about what to do to get started, because the market would definitely dry up by, I'd say, mid-April. Inflation is going down. At the peak, we were around 8%, and right now we've come down to 3.1%. This number is as of November. I think for December we've gone up slightly to 3.2, but right now we're around that 3.1, 3.2 range. And our GDP is shrinking, unemployment is rising, and from an economic perspective, demand no longer there's no longer that excess demand that we were seeing in the pandemic. And one of the ways to see that is everything you ordered, you have to wait for months, be it cars or anything, any service, with contractors, even in the real estate market. But right now, it's no longer the case. The demand that's there kind of meets supply, meaning that if you order something, you can get it within reasonable time without having to wait. I even remember in the middle of the pandemic, to get appliances, you had to wait like 2 years, in some of these stores. However, that's no longer the case. The demand has definitely cooled down, which is a good thing, because that will bring down inflation, that will bring down the prices that they're tracking, and hopefully that will reduce rates in the near future. For a quick market update on price, you can see this is a whole graph of our Ontario market. This is Hamilton, Waterloo, and Wellington. Wellington is Guelph, and Post Lynch, and some of those counties around Guelph. So you'll see that prices have dropped about 10%, as you can see here. And this is if we look at year over year. However, what I want you to take a look at is how the prices fluctuate over time. You will see that sometimes our market goes up and down, but the overall trend is upward. So you will see here at the height in 2022, I think the height was in February of 2022. Prices were the highest they've ever been in Ontario, and then they corrected quite quickly. And then when this is when the rates were paused, prices started going up, and then they started increasing rates again, and we started seeing a downward trend. Right now they've paused, so we're expecting that in the next few months, the outlook is going to definitely point upwards. That is if they don't change any other policies, because with the government these days, things start to get better and then they introduce something else that changes the market. So if they don't change anything else, based on what we've seen data-wise, is that as rates stabilize or they go down, prices will definitely go up. As a seller, these are things that you have to be aware about. One thing I want to say is definitely in the last 3-4 months, I would say maybe starting in October, November, December, we weren't seeing a lot of activity in the market. So there are a lot of listings that were on the market and weren't selling. We had listings that would sit there with very few showings, right? That was the market then. Right now, as I'm speaking today, being second week of January, we're seeing a different picture. The homes that are on market are actually getting activity, and the people that are looking are actually serious. If you are looking to sell a student rental, timing is everything. I'm going to keep saying this because this is going to be the difference maker between you getting, the price that, everybody is getting in the market, or you getting a little bit more. And we saw this also last year with student rentals. There is that period of time where students are getting accepted into the universities, and other students are getting notified by the universities that their lease ends as of April 30th, and parents are looking for solutions. This is the time to be thinking about selling if you're selling this year. And if you're selling next year, that's a conversation that we can have afterwards. So, talking about interest rate in mortgages, where are we going? Once again, the prediction is that rates will drop in 2024. As you can see here, these are the predictions by some of the banks. Right now, year-end 2023, which is like December, most rates were at 5%. However, they targeted for year-end of 2024. You can see some of the banks like CIBC is even predicting that will be at 3.5%. And this is for a 5-year term. For 2025, they're predicting that will be around 2.5, which will be good. But I guess what I want people to see as you're looking at this graph is that the prediction is positive for investors, that rates will definitely come down, and that will probably ease some pressure that people are feeling with those mortgage payments. But this is definitely something that will likely improve the market as well. Okay, so going into selling student rentals, as I was saying, this is probably, timing is everything when you're selling a student rental. As I was saying, most leases will start on May 1st, which means if you're selling a student rental, you want to market it to parents whose kids are in the universities and they're looking for a place to live. And that usually is happening right now. Right now, I have a few student rentals on market that I'm selling as a listing agent. And we're definitely seeing a lot of traffic with parents starting to look for homes for their kids. Another thing also that I want to bring to your attention, as you probably already know, is that March and April is such a stressful time for the students. So when we list homes during, in that March to April period, such a stressful time because they have midterms, they have papers that are due, they have exams. It's not ideal because it's so hard to, I shouldn't say it's so hard, but it's harder to get them to cooperate and to work with us in terms of allowing people through the home. And to avoid that, that's why even with the clients I'm talking to now, when I speak to the students in the homes, they're more willing to coordinate so we can get the property on market and sell it before things get busier in their lives. So that's why I was saying timing is everything, and it's something that you should be thinking about. I know that there are also leases that start as of September 1st, but those are very few. I'm probably going to say maybe less than 5% of leases will start as of September 1st. And I've seen that leases that start of September 1st are usually with mature students or grad students. So if you have a property, I know that some people have properties with tenants who are in until September 1st. That is also something that we can talk about. But right now, with the majority of the students, and when I'm talking universities, I'm talking Waterloo, I'm talking, McMaster University, I'm talking Laurier, even Guelph University. In these markets, I have listings in those places, and I'm able to market and to look at the market to see what it's doing. So the picture I'm giving you today applies to all these 4, maybe 5 if you include Conestoga, and 6 if you include Mohawk College. So these are markets that I'm very active in. And if you have any questions specific to these places, Mohawk College, McMaster University, Wilfrid Laurier, Waterloo, Conestoga, and University of Guelph. Those are all places that I know very well. I went to some of those schools myself, so I'm even able to help with marketing the property, looking at the neighborhood, and coming up with a strategy that works best for that property. So during the sale of your home, landlords have to follow the LTB regulations when selling a property. We'll get into that in the next slide. So tenants have rights. You probably already know this, but some of the important things that I want to bring to your attention are that the tenant has the right to occupy the rental unit within a fixed lease term, as well as a month-to-month lease. So I have had some clients who've asked me questions like, can I kick my tenant out so I can sell the property? No, you can't. You cannot kick them out because you want to sell. However, there are ways to If you want to sell, there are ways to sell your property with the tenant in. However, there are also ways to negotiate with the tenant. These are things that I'm going to get into in the next slides, but I just want to mention that because I've heard about these questions so much, that's why I'm addressing them. You cannot kick a tenant out simply because you want to sell. That's not a good reason. Whether they're on a lease or they're on a month-to-month lease, you cannot kick them out just because you want to sell a property. Another thing that I want to bring to your attention is that we need minimum 24-hour notice for accessing the property. You probably already know this, but I want also to bring this to your attention that it will be the same thing with showings, with photographers, with stagers, anybody who's coming through the home. We have to work out that 24-hour minimum notice for accessing the property, which is something that we have to definitely work with our timelines to make sure that that does not interrupt the process of the sale. We need minimum 60 days notice if a month-to-month tenant is moving out. So what I mean by that is if the property is purchased by a parent whose child is going to, let's say, Waterloo, University of Waterloo, in that case, you have to notify the tenant and give them 60 days notice and let them know that the property will be occupied by an owner. In this case, the child of the buyer. Sometimes the student is on the purchase and the sale agreement as well. So in this case, the owner is moving in. When we talk about serving notice, there are things that as a seller, you have to be very careful about. And this is why, you need to definitely, if you're looking for to sell, you need to work with somebody who understands what they're doing, because sometimes you can end up in trouble. I'll give you an example. We had a transaction where this was one of the agents in my office. The property was sold and they served notice to the tenants, and the tenants moved out, but the owner did not move into the property. And then the previous tenant sued the seller. So when you're navigating this situation, for sure, you definitely, and I'll get into some of those examples later where we can talk about solutions, but a good solution in this case is to make sure that if you're signing that agreement of purchase and sale, you need to make sure that if the buyer is giving you direction to serve notice, they sign an affidavit saying they will move in or their child will move in. And if they don't move in, they are releasing you of any liability that might come by, which means if they don't move in or they break the law, it has nothing to do with you, because they've signed an affidavit stating that they will move in. And I want you to also understand that a lot of the times we agents are working on very important paperwork that by the time it gets to the lawyer, it's too late. So I know that some people might think, oh, my lawyer will catch that. But by the time the paperwork gets to the lawyer, things have already been signed, terms have already been agreed upon, and it's so hard to change it. So when you're looking for a realtor to work with when you're selling a property, make sure that you're working with somebody who understands these regulations. And in most cases too, I will bring in paralegals because I'm not a paralegal. So in some cases, when I see that a situation is complicated, I bring in a paralegal and we work together. The reason is to make sure that we're protecting our client. When you sell a property, because nowadays, if you're found to have broken the rules or you're in violation of the ATB regulations, you can be fined up to $50,000. So our job is to make sure that we're protecting your best interests by definitely doing a due diligence and making sure that you understand what you're signing. Another point that I want to bring in is that you cannot interfere with the tenant's reasonable enjoyment of the property. This usually comes up with people who want to do showings at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. We cannot do that. The regulation allows us to access the property between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So we definitely have to stay within those times. Another thing too that comes up with students is, especially nowadays with work from home or online classes, they have exams in their rooms. And that's why we try to avoid that exam period, because what we see in exam periods is that very few rooms are accessible. Most students are like, oh, don't come to my room, I have an exam during that time. And in that case, we can't show that room. And most buyers, especially in this market, buyers are very, very picky. They want to like look at everything, you know, look at every room, measure it, smell it, you know, like they basically are looking at the smallest of things that people never looked at when the market was, you know, crazy. Now, that was not normal. I do acknowledge that. I actually prefer this time when the buyer goes in knowing what they're getting. But for sellers, we need to understand that we have to provide access. I'm seeing that in most cases, buyers aren't even writing offers if they don't feel like they've seen the home. So if we're showing the property and 2 out of 3 rooms are available and they haven't seen the master bedroom, in most cases, that's their decision-making point. Hopefully, they were hoping their child could, you know, move into the master bedroom. And because they didn't see it, they didn't visualize it, they end up taking the next available property because now people have more options than they used to have. Back when the market was very hot, people would write offers on properties they haven't seen. And I think that what happened is it took, I feel like it recreated the expectation in maybe, you know, us being, you know, a little more comfortable and think that people are going to write offers without seeing the property, but that is not the case. You know, I want you as a seller to know that for you to get top dollar, the property has to be accessible. We have to work well with tenants. That's another thing that I see out of maybe, let's say, newbies make mistakes, is thinking that you can control the tenant and that you can move them around and you can, in most cases, we have to work with them. I find that creating that win-win solution where, for example, I'm saying to the tenant, look, I know you have exams. I know you have midterms coming up in February. If we work together, I could sell this property before then, and you can go back to normal life before you know it. That sounds like a win-win. It's not just about me saying, hey, the rules say you must allow, like, I know that what the rules say, but if they don't cooperate, if they start mouth talking the property, if they start leaving the property dirty and untidy, like there are things that tenants can do to make your life hard, even though they're doing, let's say, within reason. And, you know, suing them and going up, that just takes too long. What I want to share is that in most cases, we have to work with the tenant and we have to find a win-win solution where we're giving them something while taking something that we want to. Okay, so for landlords, it is your right to sell your property. So I've seen, you know, clients who say to me, you know what, I can't sell the property right now because it's tenanted. I understand that property is tenanted. However, if you really want to sell, you can do that. We just have to make sure that we do it right. You also have the right to make repairs. Some of the things that I recommend clients definitely look at and fix is if you have any water problems. If anything is leaking or if there's any sign of water damage, please fix it, because in this market, that is just a complete turnoff. You know, people have options, and a lot of people in today's market are not looking for projects. They want something that's I shouldn't say move-in ready, because the standard is different with student rentals, but I want you to know that water damage is one of those things that will reduce the price of your home. So if your property has any sign of, let's say the roof is leaking, or there's a tap that's leaking, or there's any sign of mold, please get a professional to look at it, get a professional to fix it. And what I've seen is usually the cost of getting it fixed is much less than what you will pay if you don't fix it and sell the property as is. What I'm trying to say is, for example, if you don't fix it, in most cases I've seen even with properties with mold, depending on how bad it is, might cost anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 to fix it. However, if you sell the property as is, you might lose out on like $20,000, because the only available buyer that wants to buy such a property with the water damage is one that's willing to take the risk. And there's very few of those in this market because people have more options to look at. So that's one of them that I'd recommend you do. Some of them, so I have a checklist of repairs that I recommend that sellers do. If you're looking for that checklist, please let us know. We'll be happy to provide it. And these are repairs that will yield the highest return on your investment. I know that a lot of people who own these student rentals are investors. Some are investors that got into it by accident, like you had a child who goes to the university and therefore you have to buy a property. That was an investment as well, even though you might not think of it as such. But, you know, because you're an investor, you have that investor mindset. we want to make sure that we're using your capital the right way, that we're investing in where it's going to yield the highest return on investment. So we do have a list of those repairs. Sometimes I can come in, do a consultation. We work together to see what will actually bring you the highest return on your money that you're putting in the property. So do let us know if you're thinking about doing repairs and you'd like that list of things that you should look at before you look at anything else. As a landlord, you also have the right to enter the property, which is how we're able to do showings. So one of the things that I've seen is maybe some tenants think that, oh, you can't come to my room. Like, sometimes, they want to restrict access. But the truth is, as a landlord, you have the right to access the property with proper notice. And that includes for the sale of, for the purpose of selling. So what we just have to do is make sure that we communicate that to the tenant in a way that doesn't intimidate or that doesn't cause them to feel defensive. So what I usually do if we're having a problem with showings is I'll sit down with the tenant and we'll come up with a solution. Why don't you want people accessing your room? We need it to be shown. Maybe they'll tell me, oh, maybe I have an exam, then we can work around the schedule. But the key is to get people through, and you do have the right to have that property shown. Now, we've had situations in some cases where the tenant does not want to cooperate. And in that case, where things are getting out of hand, that's when we bring in professionals. And we do have a list of professionals, paralegals, as well as lawyers that we work with that can work to resolve that situation. While I'm saying all this, I still want you to know that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a paralegal. I'm giving you experience as an investor first, because I'm an investor, but also as a realtor. So things I've seen as I'm selling my own properties as well as my clients' properties. But I also want you to know that if things get out of hand, I'm not going to try to fix it myself, because I'll be foolish. What I'll do is I'll bring in a professional who can take care of the situation, make sure that you're protected as an investor. Okay, so some of the things, practical advice and things that I would be thinking about if I was planning to sell a tenanted student rental. One of the things is you can either sell the property with a tenant in it, which is option number one, where the buyer must assume the tenant. In most cases, that will be the situation because the students are on a yearly lease or they're on a month-to-month lease. The challenge with that is that it reduces the pool of buyers to investors only, especially if the tenant is on a lease. Okay, if the property is tenanted and the tenant is on a month-to-month lease, and if they don't have a lease, that means they're automatically on a month-to-month lease. In that situation, that is not something you have to worry about very much, because we're seeing right now a lot of people who are buying are parents. So if parents are buying for their kids, they do have ground to serve notice and get those tenants out. So I'm specifically talking about the situation where a buyer must assume the tenants because they're on a long-term lease. In our market, sometimes we see 4-year leases, 5-year leases where the students have signed to stay in the property for so long. So in that case, we're seeing that if you have such a situation, reach out. We've had some solutions around, what to do, navigating the situation and seeing how to fix it. But one of the things for sure that you have to think about is the tenant on a lease or are they not? If they're not on a lease, please don't sign any new leases if you're thinking about selling. Even if you're thinking about selling in a year or two from now, do not sign any new leases. It's better for you for them to be on a month-to-month because that gives you control of whether or not you sell it to parents and people who occupy it, or whether you sell to investor only. And one thing we're seeing right now is that a lot of investors aren't buying because the numbers aren't making sense in some cases. Okay, so if that happens, if you're only reduced to a pool of investors, then that may result in a reduced sale price. That is a reality. So what I would recommend is if you have a tenant in your unit that is on a lease, I'd say let's talk about the situation and see if there's a way we can navigate that. The second option is where the seller will provide vacant possession to the buyer. This can be done in one of two ways. One is where you sign a mutual agreement to end the tenancy, and this is cash for keys. This is also where cooperation is key. Sometimes when I come in, usually we have a system that we put our clients through where we send them an email that they can send their tenants notifying them of potential sale of the property. And then the next thing that I do is I come in and I speak to the tenant to see what their goals are. We've actually had mutual like this N11 signed without any cash given, because the tenant was already thinking about moving. They just didn't want to break their lease, but really deep down they want to move. Like we just had one of those. Actually, they moved out as of December. And this is what I was saying, where like, having a conversation, seeing what's good for them, what works for them, and then working with them to find a common ground. Sometimes the tenant doesn't want to move, and that's okay. And that's where you can talk to them and see what it will take to get them to move. Sometimes people will take 1 month's rent, 2 months rent. Those are just examples that I'm giving. But I would say if you are a landlord right now, and this is the first time you're navigating this, don't do it alone. Work with professionals who can give you advice, and also who have the experience to be able to predict what could happen next. I'll tell you one thing. I found that every time, if you tell tenants that we're going to be selling the property, depending on how you say it, most people end up on Googling, my landlord is selling. And once they Google, you know what happens. Google gives them all this negative feedback and how to challenge you, things that probably will not happen if you approach the situation better. So that's why I'm saying, if this is the first time navigating a situation like this, don't do it alone. Please connect with a professional, vet them. When I'm vetting professionals to work with, I like to work with people who own properties themselves. Because if you're working with somebody who doesn't own a property, sometimes it's hard for them to relate unless that is their specialty. If they're a paralegal and they specialize in tenant issues, then I would trust them. However, if you're just working with a realtor and believing that they know what to do, very few realtors are investors. I think the stats are like maybe less than 10% are investors. So make sure for sure that if you're working with a professional, you trust them and you believe they'll do the best job that they can. As I said earlier, in everything we do, cooperation is key. I find that it's better to work out a win-win than try to go through the lawyers. Because if you go through the lawyers, you go through the LTV, most of you know how backed up the LTV is. You're going to be waiting 6, 7, 8 months. But what I find with students is most of them, they have a plan with their lives and they're ready to, they know what they want basically. And if you work with them, you can easily find common ground. Another method is where you have to send the N12s, and this is what I was just talking about. This is you serve notice to end the tenancy, but you can only do this if the buyer or the buyer's immediate family is moving in. Immediate family is their parent or their child. Okay? And in this case, you have to keep in mind, you have to look at when the lease is ending. If they want to move in before the lease ends, they can't do that. So if they want to close sooner, in that case, we would have two options where they can close after the lease ends and they can serve notice and the tenant will move out by the end of the lease, or they can close, assume the tenant, and serve notice while they own the property. You can't evict anyone just because you're selling. I think I already said that. And I say that if proven to have acted in bad faith, you can be fined up to $50,000. That's a lot of money. I wouldn't want anybody to find themselves in that situation. Okay, so if you're thinking about selling a property, this is where I suggest you start. First of all, you have to confirm your timeline based on your circumstances. I find with student rentals, you definitely have defined windows where it's the best time to sell. Like I said, from anywhere between now and probably mid-February is a good time to list. Another reason why we like to give, to encourage people to sell now is because you have to give that 60-day notice. And it's not just 60 days, it's 2 full months. So we find that when people sell the property and what's happening, let's say by the end of February, then you have March and April as when you can serve notice, and the new owner will take over May 1st. So with student rentals, the timelines are kind of predefined. It's just a matter of deciding whether you want to do it this year or next year. I know that there's a small percentage of landlords whose leases start and end as of August 31st or September 1st. That situation is unique. We can also come up with solutions, but I know the majority of them will be April 30th, May 1st leases. As I was just saying earlier, do not sign any new leases. I know that, especially in Waterloo, there's a lot of buildings there, and a lot of landlords do not manage their own units. They have a property management company working on their behalf. Please notify the property management company that you will not be signing any new leases. You'll not be renewing the leases, that you want the tenants to go on a month-to-month basis. And also that same situation applies to other contracts that you might be signing. For example, if your water heater contract is coming up, or any other contracts, maintenance contracts that you might have, I would say, think about the timelines in a sense that the new owner might not like all these services they have going, right? So then that might also become a problem, or it might be a negotiating factor for them. But what I want you to keep in mind is, if you need to sign anything new, make sure that it's something that you can get out of, or it has an exit, like you have a way to get out of it if the new owner didn't want it. Another thing that I encourage landlords to do, and sometimes I do this for my clients, is inspect the property to assess the condition. I know with student rentals, sometimes, they're not the best maintained, some of them are, but definitely I would say go in there, get to know your property. And I know some of our clients, that we worked with at one point, who haven't been to the property in a year. In a year, so much can change. The neighborhood can change. Like, I want you to go at the property, know the condition of the property. What I was talking about with like water leaking or taps leaking, sometimes those things are happening and the students don't report it to the owner. So go there on a regular basis, especially if you're thinking about selling. You can even get a contractor to come in and look at some of these things and see what it would cost to fix those issues. It's your property, so get to know it, know the condition it's in, and then start to think about what you need to do to get it market ready if you're thinking about selling. As I say, you don't have to do this alone. You can definitely connect with professionals. If you're in these markets that I work in, you can connect with me and I'll be able to work with you and guide you through the process. Another thing that I like to talk about is, closer to when we're about to go to market, I'd say probably like a month to a couple of weeks before we go to market, you need to inform the tenants about your plans to sell. What this does, it gives them two options, actually. One, some tenants might say, oh, my mom actually can buy this property, or my dad can buy this property. So giving them a first choice, I guess, if they can buy the property, that'll be good. 99% of the time they don't. But what that does is you've given them the benefit of a doubt. They feel valued in the transaction, Second, it feels like you're not hiding anything, If you're gonna, not tell them, and then all of a sudden they see a realtor show up and they don't know that, you were even thinking, like, I feel like that comes out across like you're hiding something, and that makes the relationship harder to manage. What I've seen right now when I'm working with my clients, in most cases, we start early, and before they introduce me to the tenants, they will just send out an email. We're planning about selling our property. We've hired a realtor. She'll connect with you to work out next steps. Simple as that, And I find that when they hear it from the owner, they feel respected, and I can come in, and then we also show them we have nothing to hide. In fact, the first thing that I say to them, to avoid them going on Google and searching and creating situations that are out of our control, the first thing I say to them is, we're going to do this legally, because everything we do it legally. I don't want you to think that anybody's going to take advantage of you, because, that's not what we're looking to do. We're looking to work together, do this legally, to make sure that your rights are respected, the landlord's rights are respected, and that everybody is walking away in a situation where they feel well respected, right? And nobody's taken advantage of. So I find that if you don't inform your tenants, it definitely looks like you're hiding something, and that's when they turn to Google, or they turn to their cousin who had a situation, or they just look outside for answers. Instead of them looking outside for answers, it's better if you are upfront and you tell them that you have nothing to hide. You're going to do everything legally. Point number 5 is where you start to plan repairs. I would say before you plan repairs, definitely I'd say get in a professional. If you want, what I've done with my clients in the past is I've gone in to give them a market evaluation based on what the comparables are saying. And I also bring that checklist with me of things that they can do that will bring the highest return on their investment. I've seen clients who have, how do I say this? Should I say wasted money? Maybe, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say wasted. But anyway, they've spent money on things that don't need to be changed or don't need to be fixed, you know? Especially when you look at comparable, like I feel like us as investors, the goal is to, you know, get a good return on our investment. And I feel like when you're allocating your funds where they shouldn't be allocated, you know, that's wasting money when from how I look at it. So before you start making repairs, definitely make a good connect with a good professional who can give you a market evaluation of what it would sell for as is, and also help you, guide you on the things that you could do to make it better. And one of the ways to do that is to look at comparables. Look at what properties in the neighborhood look like. You know, if everyone in the neighborhood, let's say, you know, has a white kitchen and those are the homes that are selling, maybe you might consider, you know, improving your kitchen. You know, like there's things that you can invest your money in. Bathroom is one of them. You know, nobody wants a, you know, a dirty old bathroom. So if you improve your bathroom, that's always a good way to spend money. But always make sure that you're not over improving the property. And let me confess here, the mistakes I'm telling you, some of them I've done them myself. I remember the first property we bought. We probably, you know, because I came in, I had read all these things online. This is a long time ago. I didn't know much, right? So that's why I'm like trying to help our clients and the people that we talk, the people that we educate to not make those mistakes. Because I went in, I had Googled about, you know, how to make a property, you know, nice. And then I got this interior designer for an investment property. I'm telling you, this interior designer came in, we came up with plans and projects and started doing these things. But the truth is, what I was doing wasn't for that neighborhood. And I learned my lesson then. And that's why we talk to our clients about these things, because I know that that project, probably, I shouldn't say I lost money, but I learned a lot. That was expensive tuition to pay just to learn that over improving the property is wasting your money. You're not going to get a return on it. So before you start making repairs, definitely make sure that you know what you're doing and that what you're doing will bring the highest return on your investment. Okay, so that's my presentation. This is my contact information if anybody's is looking to connect with me. I will also now dive into the questions that we have. If you have any questions that you submitted ahead of time, I will get into them now. Right now, let me just check to see if my team has sent me any questions from the social media. Alrighty, so just see. Okay, so we'll start with the questions that were submitted ahead of time, and then we'll dive into the questions submitted on social media, okay? Alrighty, so the first question is, I own a rental unit in Hamilton and want to know what is the best time to sell a rental unit. So if this is a student rental and you're close to Mohawk College or you're close to McMaster, you should definitely be looking at these timelines. However, if it's just a rental property, then you can sell anytime, given that, you know, your tenants are not in a lease. If they're on a lease, you can sell it as an investment property. But when they're not on a fixed lease, then you have the option to sell it as a home that a new buyer can move into. So I hope I answered that correctly. And I hope that the person who asked this question was here when I was talking about the timing of different units, because that's also something that I guess can answer this question. Question 2, my student rental is old, but it's in a great location. Should I do any repairs and upgrade before selling, hoping to get a better price? The student rental is old, but it's in great location. That's a good thing, right? Location, 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 as they say. But before you do any repairs, like I was just saying, I would say connect I would say reach out to me. I'll give you the list of things that will yield the highest return on your investment. So then when you're depending on your budget, you can start on the things that are the cheapest and then work your way up. If your budget only goes a certain way, that's okay, because the first things that you did will bring a high return on your investment. One of the things that I also like to do is paint. Like, paint is not that expensive. Some people can even do it as a DIY project. But if you choose a nice modern color, don't just go paint any colors. Please don't paint blue, don't paint pink, modern colors. Like, you have to go with colors that are, because when you're painting, you're not looking at what you like as a seller. You're looking at what the buyers out there are liking in today's market. So that is also something that, we can kind of help suggest colors that will work for the market. But if you're looking to do renovations, I would say for sure, don't just start spending money on things that you think you should do. I would say invest the money where you'll get the highest return. Question number 3. With the mortgage rates expected to go down this year, do you think prices will see an upward trend? Yes, I think that what usually happens, and we're already seeing it, is when there's instability in the market, like we had in the summer months when rates were going up, the buyers don't feel confident to make that purchasing decision. But right now, in the situation we're in, where rates are stable, and of course the prediction are that rates will come down, then we're seeing people, more and more buyers come to the market. And as more and more of them come into the market, prices will definitely go up. One thing I think will likely happen is that as soon as rates start to get better and things get better, I feel like there will be a lot of homes on market. Inventory will go up. Why? Because there's a lot of people who've been sitting on this decision. They want to sell, they want to move, but they're not ready, or maybe they're waiting for rates to get better. So I feel like as soon as rates get better, the market will get so busy at once. If you're a seller that wants to wait for that, you could definitely do that. But if you also want to take advantage of the market, or to see what you can get in a market before everybody's home is on market, then that's also something that you should be thinking about. But I definitely know that a lot of people are waiting, sitting on the sideline, hoping rates go down so they can sell. So that will probably create inventory. And you know what happens when people have more options, then prices will not see that jump that we're looking at. I'm going to say it also depends on where you are, right? Because what I'm saying right now, I wouldn't say for Niagara, because Niagara has been a very different market, or London. I know that when prices were high, London and Niagara were very popular, but the truth is the distance to go from Toronto to Niagara, Toronto to London or Windsor, the distance is far. So for that reason, people can commute there. So when prices go down, these areas got hit more. Or I'd say that prices went down much more than they did in these areas like Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo, that are so close to Toronto, because people can still live here and commute to work in Toronto. So I'm going to say that also depends on where you are. Question number 4. What if the current students are not ready for showings? As landlord, do I have right to still have showings? Yes, you do have the right to do showings. The students can say they're not ready. However, as I said, I would not approach that situation in an aggressive way. I would have a conversation, find out why they don't want to allow showings. Them saying I'm not ready, that's not a good reason. If they have a very good reason, then I would work with them to see what else will work. Like, I've had a situation where the tenant just had surgery and they can't be out of their room for 6 weeks. Like, I understand that, so in that case, then we work with them to see, okay, when's the surgery, or when's the 6-week period over? And once the 6-week period is over, can we have access? Like, there's things that you have to work with people. You can't just, and I know there are people who believe in being aggressive and they think they're winning, but the truth is they're not winning. They're missing out on a lot of really good opportunities to make a good, sort of win-win solution, So I believe in let's work together, let's see what we can achieve. And not every situation is the same. If these students are not ready for showings, they have a reason why. I'd say sit down with them, find out why. And if you feel like you're not equipped to do that, work with a professional who understands what they're doing. The truth is, these students also must know that they can't do that. But if they have a good reason, like what I just said, where somebody just had surgery and they can't be out of their room, that's something that you have to respect. We had somebody who was on chemo. Like there are situations that you definitely have to work with people instead of just coming up aggressive. Okay. Okay, question number 5. Does vacant possession attract better offers? Yes, that's just the truth. Vacant possession will have a higher chance of getting a better offer for multiple reasons. One is you're opening up the property to a wider range of buyers, right? Because if you can't provide vacant possession, that means the tenant can't move out. For, let's say, if they're still on a lease, that means that you're only appealing to investors. But you have to, and I shouldn't say you have to. If you're in a position where you have to sell, this shouldn't stop you. I'd say it depends on a case-by-case basis. So I'd say let's talk about it and see how best to approach it. But yes, if there is a vacant possession attached to the property, there's a higher likelihood that you'll get a higher price because you have a bigger pool of buyers. Okay, so let me go to the next question. Okay, let me see. Just make sure that I'm monitoring all the different ways questions are coming in. Alrighty. So, does selling a student rental require any special documents other than the usual sale documents? Yeah, that's an interesting question. You don't require any other special documents. The only other things I guess that I could think about are those, in a situation where you have to issue N12s. Those are the forms where you're serving notice for the tenants to move out. It's a different transaction for sure. It's different from selling a property that's occupied by the owner. Because when the property is occupied by the owner, you don't have to navigate this other relationship, with like we would do with a tenant in a tenanted property. So you don't need additional documents, but you definitely need additional protection because now, as I said, you have this other third-party relationship that you're managing. You're managing the relation between the seller, the buyer, but you also have a tenant to manage. So there's definitely more clauses, if I could say that. In the agreement of purchase and sale, you have to make sure. Let me tell you another secret, things that sellers don't know. Maybe, well, some of them probably, if you have experience, you would know. But most people don't know this. In the agreement of purchase and sale, the Form 100, if you do not address the tenant situation in the Schedule A, you're basically saying, I will provide vacant possession. Like the automatic thing that will happen is that you have to provide vacant possession. So when I say you have to work with somebody who knows what they're doing, it's for reasons like this. Because if your agent that you're working with does not mention that there's a tenant and that they have to assume tenants, or they don't provide for a way to deal with the tenant situation in the agreement of purchase and sale, that means you as a seller, you've agreed to provide vacant possession. And it doesn't matter what you do, you've agreed to it. By the time you realize that you agreed to it, it's too late. Right? Because agreements have already been signed. Lawyers have already, even if the lawyers wanted to change it, they say, oh, there's a tenant in the property. The other lawyer will say, you signed it. You said you provide vacant possession. Because if you don't address it, you're automatically saying, I'll give you vacant possession. The only time it's different is if you're working in commercial, right? With the commercial leases, it's different. But on the residential side, which I think most student rentals are residential, remember this. When you do that agreement of purchase and sale with whoever realtor you work with, remember that if it's not addressed in that agreement of purchase and sale, you're automatically agreeing to provide vacant possession. And if you can't, I've seen landlords pay tenants to move out and upwards of 20,000, 30,000. Why? Because they're in a sticky situation. They want the property to sell. It has to close. They've already agreed to provide vacant possession. The tenant doesn't want to go anywhere. So they end up giving them large sums of money to get them to move. So when I'm working with my clients, it's my job to make sure that they're protected, right? So that's why I keep saying this. Make sure, and I'll tell you, and I would say that probably this is, I feel like people should work with professionals, right? So when I'm on the writing, the offer side, when I'm on the buy side, I'm not going to bring it up because I want my client to get vacant possession. So I will write the agreement, I'll send it to you as a realtor. It's your job to catch it. So I am telling you that and then we also have, sellers who want to do it themselves, DIY, same thing. When I'm writing an agreement of purchase and sale and I don't address that as on the buy side, you receive it, you don't address it, or you don't bring it up so we can negotiate and come up with a solution. That means you're automatically agreeing to provide vacant possession. So that's something that you should think about when you're working and you're navigating this situation. Anyway, so that relates to, are there any additional documents? I wouldn't say there are additional documents per se, but I'd say there's an additional relationship that you're managing, and that should show up in the agreement of purchase and sale. Okay. I think we're question number 7 now. I want to sell my rental unit near downtown Guelph. Should I list it now to get best rate or wait a couple months for September session? So this really depends on a few factors. If it's just a rental unit where it's not a student rental, I would say, we can talk about to see why you want to wait. The truth is we're in an upward market, so things will probably get better instead of things getting worse. So waiting won't hurt you as much. But if it's a student rental, I think it should get to market now. Maybe at least in the next 8 weeks, student rental should be on market, because the likelihood of you getting a higher price is now when every parent is looking for a property that is within a student district, within a student neighborhood. Another thing too is when you're selling this student, for example, if you have a student rental that you want to sell in, let's say, October, families that are buying know that, most of them will know, especially if the agents are local, they will know that it's a student area. So it might not get as much as you would have gotten if you had sold it as a student rental. There are also units that are in student buildings or like student villages, where it's a condominium and the only person who can occupy it is a student. If you're in that situation, it's in your best interest to sell while students and parents are looking for properties right now. Because if you wait until October, your market won't be there. Okay. Alrighty, so I can probably take one more question because right now we're at 7:58. So let me see. I think someone raised their hand. Just one question. Please go ahead, or you can type your question and we can answer. We have only 1 minute left, so I can take that quickly. I'm trying to choose between the number of questions I had. Maybe I should also just say that if I don't get to all these questions, I'll get to them. I'll call you one-on-one and answer them, because we know who submitted the questions. If you have your hand up, you can either just, unmute and speak, or you can type it in the chat and I could just take that as the last question. I'll give you 20 seconds to do that, maybe 30 seconds, because we are running out of time and I want to be respectful of your time. Okay, so we had a hand raised, but I don't know if they're going to type or anyway. Okay, so it looks like the hand is down, but that's okay. I think that then in that case, as I said, if I didn't get to your question, that's okay, because I can call you one-on-one and I can answer those questions one-on-one. I just wanted to take this time to thank everyone for showing up. And I hope that this webinar has answered some of the questions that you had. And more importantly, I hope that you learned something that will advance you in your real estate investing career. If you have questions, again, my contact information is here. You can always reach out. You can also connect with our team. I think there's a link where you can book a one-on-one consultation where I can sit with you and can look at your specific situation. Other than that, thank you very much for coming to today's webinar. And I hope you have a good evening. Take care.